Hello and welcome to the Speakers Forum. I would like to talk today about why it is that we don't understand each other. Talking about intellectual understanding here, not language understanding. It is language as well, but I'm not talking about different recognized languages. I'm talking about different intellectual understandings. You may be familiar with the media and the way that the media often pushes a particular point of view without telling you what that point of view is. I'm not a great fan of the media, but politics, I am a Catholic. I subscribe to the social doctrine of the Catholic Church. That does not make me a right wing or a left wing or anything in between. I'll try to explain what that means. Right wing and left wing are terms that arose at the time of the French Revolution, and the left wing were the progressives. I think they were actually the capitalists back then, and the right wing were the socially conservative. And there has been a kind of alliance in some sense between right wing and Christianity, but it's not a real alliance. The people who founded conservative politics in the wake of the French Revolution may or might not have been Christians, but they did not believe in Christianity. They did not believe in God necessarily, let alone in Christ as the Son of God. Rather, the conservative / right wing believed that the Christian churches were a major force in holding society together, and they needed to be treasured and protected precisely for that reason. The left-wing radicals believed on the other end that the church was holding society back. And so as a result of that, it has come to be the case that left-wing has often, in practice if not necessarily in theory, come to be very anti-religious. My point, however, is that the right-wing / conservative is not really pro-religious anyway. They're essentially pro-religious on the cultural, social level, but not on the true religious level. I'll try to explain what I mean here. But basically what that means is that I am not right-wing or left-wing. Certainly, as I believe in practicing Catholic, I'm a type of conservative. And yet the term conservative means a whole lot of different things nowadays. I would not want to call myself conservative by today's standards. There's a belief that being conservative means to believe in free market ideology, and that of course is not true. It's simply not the case that being conservative makes one automatically a fan of free market economics, not at all. As I mentioned earlier, the original left wing at the time of the French Revolution were the capitalists. And in one sense, the radical left, for example, Marxism, are the natural consequence of the capitalists. We are often told, I think wrongly, that capitalism and socialism are contraries. We must fight for capitalism and against socialism. I think capitalism in its unrestrained form is as much of an evil as unrestrained socialism.
Yeah.
There is a link, and I'll explain why there is why I think there is a link.
Capitalism about corporatism, where the government gives money to companies, you know what I mean, or special exemptions to companies. So
Well, the idea there is that companies will then use that money in the interest of giving people jobs, but it doesn't work like that.
That's right. But then they get money and then still send the jobs overseas. It's a racket.
What is the basis of modern day capitalism? Don't mistake what I'm calling capitalism with private property and free enterprise. Private property and free enterprise are an absolute good. The problem is that under the current system, not many people have got real private property. Well, many people in our country, but by far not everyone by far. The other is that when you get capitalist monopolies and large multinational companies, then you've created entities that are actually independent of any nationality, and basically they've got their own agenda. That's not free enterprise, because then small business is not able to compete. free enterprise really should be based on the dominance of small business over big business. Free enterprise is a good thing. Capitalism as we have it now is not necessarily. The other thing about modern day capitalism, today's capitalism, is that it is producing a lot, it's producing a whole lot of things we need and a whole lot of things we don't need. It's producing a whole lot of things that are actually harmful. And it's got its own agency.
Like just entertainment products?
Yeah, look, entertainment. I mean, there was a time when our spare time was not taken up by entertainment. There was a time when we had no spare time, too busy working, because there was no technology. Then there was a bit of time when we had spare time and not much entertainment, so we had leisure. Now for the average person, leisure has been filled in by entertainment, and we built a huge entertainment industry. So what is actually happening with the current capitalist system, which is, relatively speaking, unrestrained capitalism, not completely unrestrained, but largely unrestrained? Well, it's producing a whole lot of, the level of production is now very, very, very high. And the level of inequality is increasing. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that everyone should be equally rich, who'd want to be anyway. Well, some people might, but the point is that the richer are getting richer, and to a certain extent the poorer are getting poorer. And there comes a certain level when basically one is, many people don't have the ability to lead good lives. And there's more to leading a good life than just having wealth. But the point is that without a basic level of basic level of wealth, you cannot lead good lives. Now, the radicals who would like to replace capitalism with socialism, revolutionary radicals, would actually love all that, because we are creating the two conditions which they regard as naturally leading on to socialist revolution, which is very high level of production and very high levels of inequality. I'm not a Marxist, so I don't support that, but at the same time I'm not a fan of capitalism in the form that we have it now. I think it has lots of problems. Don't really know what the solution is, but the point is that one does not have to be very pro-capitalist to be a conservative, and arguably to be a conservative in the proper sense of the term does not entail being very pro-capitalist anyway. It is not very sensible to say that capitalism and freedom are equal to each other, for we have at least one very major country that has capitalism but no freedom, or at least very little of it. Relatively speaking, however, capitalism is better than socialism because it does allow for more personal initiative. But as I mentioned, it has its problems. Now, I am a Christian, a Catholic Christian. Where does the church differ from right-wing and left-wing? Well, I think what distinguishes the left-wing, in some sense, is the idea that it is essentially social structures that hold people back, and we should be able to remove or change social structures to liberate human beings to then develop them in a way that is more natural. So they're basically saying that it's not really people's fault that there's some problems in the system, but that in the world, but that the problem is in the system. The right wing, I would consider to be saying something quite different. They're actually saying that human beings are very limited, and there's only so much you can do to actually make the world a better place. Insofar as conservatives, right wing, believe something can be done, I think they do try to do it, but they're not very optimistic. Christianity is different from both. Certainly, I think as a Christian we reject the idea that it's all in the system. We believe there is something fundamentally wrong with human beings. It's not anything organic, it's sin, S-I-N, sin.
A what?
Sin.
S-I-N.
Yeah. The average person, of course, will not know what sin means in the Christian context. Well, I guess you've all got the internet or access to the internet. Please Google it. The whole idea is that something has gone wrong in human nature, not because of anything organically wrong with us, but because of a wrong action performed by the very first human beings at the very beginning of time. We inherit that, and we have certain tendencies, which means that we are not able to behave, to act in ways that are actually wholesome and fulfilling. So that's, of course, very, very different from the average radical left point of view, which, of course, says that the problem is in the system more than in human beings itself. We believe the problem is in human beings. But having said that, it is not the same as the conservative right wing either, which, of course, claims that human beings are, as I understand it, the human beings are stuck, and that there's not much we can do to change the world to make people happy. On the contrary, as a Christian, I believe that because of the coming of God as man in Jesus Christ 2,000 years ago, and because of his death and resurrection, I believe that God has given us his grace, if we accept it and are willing to cooperate with it, to actually change the world for the better. We're not talking about radical change, we're talking about a different way of behaving that will actually work in the interest of human beings, in our true interests, instead of the interest of big business and big government. But of course we need to re-establish a proper understanding of what it is in life that is actually good. And there's a big debate as to what we actually believe is good and what other people might believe is good. There's a lot of agreements and a lot of disagreements. We won't go there. The point is that part of being a Christian is to ascertain what it actually is that God wants us to do, what is actually good, and then to cooperate with God's grace to allow us to actually put those things into effect. So I believe that in a society that is truly Christian, not just nominally Christian, but actually Christian in the proper sense of the meaning, we actually would have a better society. We might have to reform institutions, we might have to demolish some institutions, but not in the way that the radicals left do it, but in the way that actually fulfills our true human role.
Potential?
Human role. I don't like using human potential because that's a new age term and it means something quite different.
Okay.
So basically what I'm suggesting here is that if one understands politics, and I'm not saying the average person necessarily does, but I'm suggesting that if one understands politics merely as a secular set of ideas, then whether one is right-wing or left-wing or a mixture of both, whether one is conservative, which is loosely related to right-wing, or radical, which is loosely related to left-wing, if that's all one understands, one doesn't understand very much. Because if we are left to merely our human resources without God coming into the picture and without God's grace, to acknowledging God's grace and the power to actually change ourselves from the inside, albeit in a limited way, we're stuck. We're stuck with having utopian social programs which I suggest don't work and are often based on an unbalanced view of what is good, or we're stuck with accepting the system as it is and tolerating the excesses of current day capitalism under the assumption that a free market is in some ways the greatest good in society. You know, of course it's not. A genuine conservative will not regard free market capitalism as the greatest good. It has to be put in context and kept within bounds. From a general conservative point of view, the greatest good is social cohesion. In conservatism, as I understand that, there is room to have communities within communities and, you know, communities within the same nation, as long as they don't come into conflict and as long as they don't contradict the common good. Indeed, the local association, whether it's the local church, the local workplace, the local union, the local sports club, whatever, is the basic community. And of course, the most basic of all is the family. So one starts from the family, and from the family you move on to bigger and greater things. So in summary, I guess what I'm trying to say here is that when it comes to politics, there is really no way forward, regardless of whether one is conservative or radical, right-wing or left-wing. Capitalism is, when taken to extremes, is a problem. And basically I'm suggesting that unless we actually turn to God to change us back to the way that He created us to be, to actually move towards a proper human fulfillment, we will not be able to create a better society. And that's the reason we don't understand each other, because people are often stuck towards what they call, rightly or wrongly, to be right-wing views or left-wing views, conservative or radicals. And I do not believe that any of those views by themselves or even put together actually cover much of reality or much of our true human potential. I'll leave it at that.